Griffin, if you've read any of his stuff, he's very particular type of prose, and his voice is very unique. And it's not like Andrews and Wilson. And we sort of said that to Tom, like, we don't write like him. And he's like, oh, I know. He's like, and here's my advice to you guys. I want you to just tell the best story that you can and write it your way. Pay homage to the characters and the ethos and the canon of the Presidential Agent series, but whatever you do not try to write like him, because you will fail.
An excerpt from one of today's guests, speaking about taking over the reins of the W.E.B. Griffin Presidential Agent series. Military thriller authors Jeff Andrews and Brian Wilson are here, and I'll speak with them about Rogue Asset right after this break. I'm Robert Child, and this is Point of the Spear. Next time you're on YouTube, check out our Point of the Spear YouTube channel. We've got bonus video material from the podcast, plus tons of military history videos, including full-length documentaries. It's a great way to spend some time, and don't forget to subscribe while you're there, and click the bell icon so you'll be notified of all the great weekly videos we're uploading. Welcome back. Today's guests are former U.S. Naval officers who've come together to write some of the most action-packed military thrillers out there. Their latest novel is called Rogue Asset, and the writing duo are Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson. Join us now. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us, man. We appreciate it.
We're
Glad
honored.
to be here.
We're honored. Two military men. You both have backgrounds in the military. Is that what drew you to this genre?
Yeah, I think we were both avid readers, and it's hard to imagine, serving the military, not having picked up a Tom Clancy sometime in your past. So, when you're out there in the military, there's lots of time for reading. I think you'll find these types of books, the Ludlum books, the Clancy books. People are sharing them, handing them around in the ship's libraries and things like that. So I definitely was a fan of the genre before I started writing, but I wasn't a writer at the time. So when I was a submarine officer, I like to joke that, on a submarine, you have these long periods of boredom where you're just cruising around trying to be quiet, to not be detected. And then something terrible will happen, something exciting, something terrible, something stressful. And everybody's heart rate goes up to 1,000,000, and you get through that, and then it's back to boredom. But during those long periods of boredom, one of the ways that we would pass the time is we would tell stories. And so I sort of feel like, I got interested in storytelling just from this idea, this sort of old human tradition of, hey, we're sitting around the campfire, we're telling stories to entertain ourselves. In my case, we're sitting around the nuclear reactor telling stories to entertain ourselves. But that's kind of how I got, interested in this idea of storytelling. I think Jeff was always writing, though, right? Even from a little kid.
I was always writing. I think what's interesting, to come back to the question about genre, how we found ourselves in this genre. What's interesting is, when Brian and I met, we were both writing. As he said, I've been writing my whole life. I published my first short story when I was 14. I've just it's been a part of who I am my whole life. But I think that when Brian and I met, we both had books out, but neither of us were really writing in the military thriller space. Brian was writing thrillers for sure. I was actually writing more supernatural thrillers.
And I was doing like biotech stuff.
And I think that it's an interesting question about how we come to this genre. You'd think we both would have been writing in it already because we were both military men. But what was interesting was when Brian and I came together, it sort of restirred a lot of that military ethos in us. In the military, everything is team before self, mission before self. Everything is team oriented. There's no guy that is the guy. It's all the team. And when Brian and I met, we actually met in New York at Thriller Fest, the ITW event that happens every year with both debut authors. When we met, it was based on those shared experiences. We were both military. I was actually seeking out other people who were military because I'm a little socially inept. And so I was looking for people I would have something to talk to with at these cocktail parties and such. So our friendship was based on those shared experiences and the fact that we both are very family oriented and we have a similar faith and we had kids the same age. And after we became friends, Brian, I have to say, gets the credit for the idea of us co-authoring. And his idea was, gosh, I've been in submarines. You've worked with naval special warfare. There must be a way we can pull this together and co-author. And so really the military genre where we've been so successful That came later in our writing careers. We'd both been writing independently before that, but it's clearly being able to write in that space has been the key to our success.
Yeah, definitely. And this latest book, Rogue Asset with the W.E.B. Griffin, that's the 9th in his presidential agent series. How did that come about where you write his stories?
Well, there's a lot of estate deals. You've got the Ludlam estate, you have the Clancy estate, Griffin, and there's many others. And everybody's story for how they came to be are different, I'm sure. In our case, we had a relationship with Tom Colgan, who's the editor at Penguin, who is managing those estate projects. He had been Griffin's editor. And when they decided that they wanted to bring this series back on behalf of the estate, it was his job to find the writers to do it. We knew him through ITW. We'd actually had lunch before, and he was excited to maybe try to find something we could partner in. He wanted to bring us over at Penguin and do something. He didn't know what, but he wanted to do something. So he called us up one day, and we all went out to dinner in New York, and he dropped that bomb on us that, hey, I have this idea. Maybe you guys could do this. And so he had to run it by the estate, of course. And so the estate and Tom together decided that we would be the ones to write the next book. And I got to tell you that experience was amazing. We went from being flattered and excited and pumped up to suddenly feeling the weight of writing in the footsteps of such an icon. It was a little intimidating, to be honest with you. Obviously, we were already pretty successful with our series, but that's not the same as writing for somebody else, right, Brian?
Yeah, and we were like, what? How do we write like this guy? We were sort of talking to Tom, like, because Griffin, if you've read any of his stuff, he's very particular type of prose, and his voice is very unique. And it's not like Andrews and Wilson. And we sort of said that to Tom, like, we don't write like him. And he's like, oh, I know. He's like, and here's my advice to you guys. I want you to just tell the best story that you can. And write it your way. Pay homage to the characters and the ethos and the canon of the Presidential Agent series, but whatever you do not try to write like him, because you will fail. And for us, that was like, take a big weight off of our back, because you can't ape the master. People are too savvy for that. They're going to see that and they're going to look right through and they're like, yeah, these guys tried to write like him. They just can't do it. So we just said, all right, take that off the table, write the way we write. Very liberating for us. We had a lot of momentum on this book. And, we just hoped that the fans would sort of embrace our storytelling, and they have. So the book's done very well, and the reviews have been good. So we're excited.
I'm glad that's done well, because on a project like that, the critics are just lining up to, to crucify you. But, your last book, Dark Intercept, I was reading through some of the reviews, and one reviewer mentioned that the book ushers in a new era in Christian thrillers, and that's how I discovered you guys. It seems like you're breaking new ground in this genre that I didn't really know existed. Do you think Christian thrillers are going to become more prominent?
Yeah, we hope so. I tell you where the credit goes for this. The story is something we had sort of in a drawer, talking about, brainstorming out, and had been for how long, Brian? It must 2 years, 3 years.
We'd started this one like right around tier 1. We were brainstorming it.
So we'd been brainstorming it. We'd come back to it and we'd write a little bit. But really the credit for this, expanding the genre of Christian thrillers, that goes to Tyndale House, because Tyndale had decided, look, this is a new era. This is something we want to do. We want to attract more male readers. We want to get into action space. And so they approached us. They learned of us through a mutual friend, Josh Hood, who writes the Treadstone series, who's a man of very powerful faith. And that's actually a funny story. Josh was on an airplane with one of their acquisition people by coincidence, and they were chatting, and she really found out he was a writer, and they talked about their faith. And she goes, we have this new mission to grow action adventure. Do you have something for us? And Josh, being Josh, said, no, I don't really do that. I just kill terrorists and blah, blah, blah. He said, but we had talked to him about this project. He said, but Jeff and Brian have something. You should talk to them. So he told us about that, and we were like, oh, okay. And then a few days later, darn if we didn't get a phone call from our agents like, hey, the Tyndale wants to talk to you. And so we told them what our view was of the project, but we also talked a lot, us and them, about this shared vision we had. You know, as a man of faith, I still go see the next Jason Bourne movie. I'm going to watch the Mission Impossible movie when it comes out. I can't wait to watch it. So these things are not mutually exclusive, and the need to find good content, exciting content for readers who also have a faith has been something that's out there for years and years. So kudos to Tyndale for stepping up and doing it. And we're just so excited to be able to write in that space.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Next time, best-selling author R.J. Patterson stops by to speak about his Cold War spy series.
As I don't know, there's this romanticized idea I had in my head of the Cold War and what it was like to spy. But back then, the spycraft was still, it was devoid of all the gadgets and everything that you have today. I really wanted to tell some stories about that, but it was like these were real stories and real people that were trying to figure out how do we get information and translate that into intelligence that can help us stop the Russians from doing whatever we think they're going to be doing.
That's next time. March 25th is National Medal of Honor Day, and my new book, Immortal Valor, about the Black Medal of Honor recipients of World War II, is out now. The book chronicles these immortal heroes' life journeys through all the pain and struggle up until their ultimate triumph. I hope you check out Immortal Valor, which is on sale now as we celebrate all Medal of Honor recipients on March 25th. Now back to the conversation.
And I think another part of this whole idea, and this is something that we spent a lot of time talking about, is that, why does it have to be that these questions of faith, or maybe more importantly in this story is Jed's crisis of faith, why do these things have to be something that, are separate? Why does it have to be something that a veteran has to figure out on their own in silence, or, separate from what they read and what they're thinking about? Because that's not how life is. I mean, when you're serving, these questions come up in your mind, is this what God would want me to do? Is this moral? Am I doing the right thing? And so you're wrestling with these things when you're at the pointy tip of the spear, when you're engaging the enemy and conducting missions. So it seems like quite a big hole in the whole genre, that there's not discussion about this in storytelling. So that, Jeff likes to say, these are things that everybody's already thinking about. Why is it groundbreaking that we're mentioning them? That is already part of what the dialogue is amongst veterans. So we're just putting it on the page. And the trick now, though, is just getting, the word out and finding the readers' discovery, because a lot of folks don't, like you said, they don't know that there is such a genre. So they have to discover it and find this series and realize that, hey, yeah, there is Christian thriller fiction, men's adventure fiction from Tyndale House. I
discovered it because I started a thriller series a couple years ago, but it didn't feel like it was the normal, kill terrorists. It was a little bit different. It was more faith-based, as my films have been. So that's how I found you too. I just so I wonder if there's Christian thrillers, and it felt like the book that I'm in the process of writing, a thriller that's faith-based, but that's very encouraging.
So, and this resonates with you then, this idea of how universal those things are, right? Like the idea that, we had a lot of people say, wow, what a risk to go in that direction, to change direction. We don't feel like we've changed direction at all. We feel like this is no different than Sons of Valor or Tier 1 or Rogue Asset. We didn't take anything away. We added something. We added another layer of a universal human question, and no matter where you end up in your answer, the idea that we ask these questions is so universal that it almost is more absurd that it isn't already in fiction, right? Rather than the other way around.
I agree. There's a void there that everyone deals with, which is very important, crucial. in your writing, do you delegate the tasks? Like, do one of you take the action? Does another handle the dialogue? Or do you both write the story together?
Can I answer that, Jeff?
He's going to say that he writes all the books and then I'm just the producer.
No, what I was going to say is that typically most books, I pick all the nouns and Jeff picks the verbs.
It's, there's only a handful of successful co-authoring teams out there in any genre, and only a few in ours. And what's interesting, what we've learned we've been doing it for a while now, 15 books or whatever it is. And what's interesting, we meet these people and what they do and what we do could not possibly be more different. So there's not a formula for co-authoring, but there's a formula for each individual group of co-authors. And ours is actually what you described. We write together. We write at the same time, and we divide not by action or drama or anything like that. We just divide by chapters and characters. So like in the first part, we do a typical 3-act structure. So we'll brainstorm out part 1, which, Brian, would you agree is the most fun? Like that's when we get to we're like 8th graders, like, oh dude, you know what else could happen? Oh, no, I know, let's do this. So we do that for a couple weeks, and then we divide it up, and Brian might be writing, chapters 1, 2, 4, 9. I'm writing the other chapters. And then we write several chapters. We talk 3 or 4 times a day, and every few chapters we exchange them and we rewrite each other's chapters to get that unified voice. And then they go in a master file, and at the end we do an edit together. So it is a little weird. We've been told by more than one person to write simultaneously, but it definitely works for us. There's no question we have strengths and weaknesses. We're never going to confess what they are, of course, but he has lots of strengths. I have lots of weaknesses, and he carries me along. And somehow between us, we equal one decent writer. So we're both half a writer, right?
That's right.
Do you surprise each other when you're writing, chapters ahead? Do you come
constantly?
Back and, I didn't think of that. Or that's great.
I think that's the best part about this arrangement. I mean, if I had to pick a comp, it's sort of like a writer's room, like maybe on a TV show. That's kind of what it's like for us. I mean, we're developing the story as we go along, and that back and forth, that is the engine. That's what keeps us going, and that's why we don't have writer's block. I think with a lot of authors, they get stuck. They don't know who they're writing by themselves. Who are they going to talk to? Who's up to speed on the story? They could maybe talk to their spouse or their partner, and they say, well, they have to explain everything up to where they were. And do you have an idea about that? And then that person may or may not be a creative, or they're not in the business, but we're, we're like hiking this mountain at the same time. So it's like, pull me up. I got a rock to climb or whatever. I'm out of water. Okay. You take some of my water. I mean, so it's that back and forth, sharing ideas, and giving the other guy like the momentum. And it's really, really fun. And so we always talk about like, gosh, could we write by ourselves anymore? Like probably be a pretty terrible product.
I was wondering about that. If you could release a book on your, independent book from now.
We could, and they'd just be terrible.
I think, it's all joking aside. I think that I think we could, if we had the time, which we don't, because we're releasing like 4 books a year for the foreseeable future. So it's not an option. But I will say that if I were to write a book by myself, and I'm not just trying to kiss Brian's butt here, but if I were to write a book by myself after 15 books with Brian, I think I could do it. And I actually think it would be better than the books I wrote before we co-authored. I think that, you talked about strengths and weaknesses earlier. We definitely each have our own strengths and our own weaknesses, but I have learned from Brian and improved on my weaknesses. And I suspect he has done the same. So the writer I would be by myself now would be a much more talented writer than I was before we worked together.
Yeah, same for me.
That's
well, you had to say that.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't have to. I could just
Is there a book that you're both working on now? Is there a new one in the pipeline?
Always.
Well, there's a couple. We always have a couple in the pipeline.
Do tell.
I mean, the fun thing about our system is that because we have this crazy backgrounds, we did so many different things. I mean, Jeff was a surgeon, and he's pilot and was with Naval Special Warfare, and I was a submarine guy and did psychology and entrepreneurship. And we have a lot of interests. I think we're both naturally very curious people. Like, we're interested in geopolitics, we're interested in technology, we're interested in the human condition and sort of how all these things match together. So we love our military thrillers and covert operations. That's our bread and butter. We're never going to stop writing those. We love those. But we also like, what's happening with artificial intelligence? How's that going to affect, covert operations? How's that going to affect police investigations? How's that going to affect business? How's that going to affect the way that people, solve a murder mystery, things like that. So we have a couple of really cool projects in the pipeline that are more in that speculative fiction type of space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's 2023 for us. The first book in the series of techno thrillers comes out. The first one is called The Sandbox. We have another one in development called Aria, and then every few months. So the second book in the Shepherd series, Dark Angel, comes out in April. In June, we have the second book in the Sons of Valor series, which is our spinoff from the Tier 1. That comes out in June. In the fall, what's in the fall, Brian?
Oh, Dark Fall.
Dark Fall is coming this autumn. The third book in the Shepherd series. And yes, for those of you that keep sending us mail, Tier 1 is still up and running. Book 7 in the Tier 1 series, Dempsey, comes out next winter. And then we start to release these techno thrillers like he's talking about. So we've got a lot going on. The Shepherd series, since this will be of interest to you because you're a writer and a filmmaker, has been optioned for television. So we're going to be developing a TV series based on that series of books. And then we have some other media stuff that you're just a couple days too early for us to talk about. But we'll have some fun announcements coming up about some other media deals that we have going.
Very good. Well, the latest book is called Rogue Asset, and it's available everywhere. Brian, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us. Very good.
That's it for this episode. Thanks again for joining me. Next time, best-selling author R.J. Patterson stops by to speak about his Cold War spy series.
As I don't know, there's this romanticized idea I had in my head of the Cold War and what it was like to spy. But back then, the spy craft was still, it was devoid of all the gadgets and everything that you have today. I really wanted to tell some stories about that, but it was like, these were real stories and real people that were trying to figure out how do we get information and, translate that into intelligence that can help us stop the Russians from doing whatever we think they're going to be doing.
That's next time. And if you like what you hear, leave a review or a rating or just click the follow button. And be sure to check out our Point of the Spear YouTube channel with bonus video material plus full military history documentaries. There's tons to explore, and I hope you check it out. I'm Robert Child, and this has been Point of the Spear.
Music licensed from audioblocks.com. Point of the Spear is produced by RSC Media Group.